It's the grand finale of this World Cup 2023, and we are joined by a special guest, a guest who has been part of a victorious Indian team that won the 2011 World Cup under MS Dhoni, under Gary Kirsten as the head coach. But an integral part of that team was Paddy Upton, the mental conditioning coach. In fact, Paddy Upton joined the Indian team a year ago as well, again as the mental conditioning coach with the Indian T20 team. That was for the World Cup in Australia last. Paddy, thank you very much for your time. What's been making the news here in India is, of course, this World Cup final, but also your contribution towards how Virat Kohli came back into the form, how you helped him mentally when he was going through a rough phase. He acknowledged your support and your contribution. What exactly was it? Can you just let us know what exactly was that?
I think the main thing is I really appreciate Virat acknowledging the work that we've done together. The reality is I've worked with a number of the players. I was working with all of them last year. My role is to work with players, and it's a behind-the-scenes role. So, I just appreciate Virat mentioning the value that the work I did added. Obviously, the work I do is confidential, but it really works on getting, whether it's Virat or anyone else, getting them personally into the best possible space in their lives. That's the foundation upon which to then build the best mental space or headspace to go out and bat or bowl. So really, it's generic work. It's get into a good space, understand who you are, character, values, ethics, what am I about off the field, and then how do we build on that and get the individual to be in the best mental space, full of confidence, and be able to keep their mind in the present moment, one ball at a time.
Paddy, Virat comes across as a very confident, mentally strong person, and that we've seen while he's speaking to the media, to anybody, and on the field as well. Do such people at times, people just know about their mental strength, but are they mentally fragile as well at times? Because people always think that they're very strong, but on the other side, people do not understand that they can be fragile as well. Perhaps, that lean patch that we were talking about, and Virat over the last few months has admitted that, there was not enough support when he lost his captaincy also. He said that not many people actually called him or messaged him that, we are with you, great job done. So how do you see that?
I'm not prepared to comment on that. I'm happy to talk about the World Cup final tomorrow.
All right. So we'll straight away get to that. Paddy, you've been part of a victorious Indian team in 2011. What do you think about this final, India or Australia? Who do you think is a stronger favorite?
I think the big thing, both teams go into the final having been on a nice winning streak. India 10 games, Australia 8 games. So in that regard, they both come in with a lot of confidence. You've got two teams who's strong with a bat and ball. I would venture to say that India, if both teams play their best games of cricket, India will come out triumphant. They have more all-rounded batting lineup. They've probably got a better bowling lineup. So favor is just on India's side. However, on the day, anything can happen.
Any similarities that you see in this team and the one that you were part of in 2011?
Yes, there are some similarities. I think from the one thing that's really important in any high-performance environment is if you've got a really good leadership team that work well together and they attend in great detail to the tactics, strategy, analytical side of the game, which is sort of the left brain aspect of leadership. And on the other side, who really attend to the people management, the man management, create a really psychologically safe, comfortable, caring environment where the players feel they belong. That's more sort of left brain, people skill, man management. And in Gary Kirsten, MS Dhoni, you had both of those bases covered. In Rahul and Rohit, without a doubt, you've got, for me, one of the best leadership combinations in the game when it comes to attending to the minutest detail from a data perspective, but also from really bringing a very caring, healthy team environment. Both teams had very good with bat and ball, and both teams had the X factor. We had MS-Dhoni when it comes to chasing. This 2023 version, you've got Virat Kohli, who's the X factor when it comes to chasing.
Paddy, often MS-Dhoni was regarded as somebody very calm, even under pressure, whenever he was. And Rohit also is at least considered something on the similar lines, like how MS-Dhoni used to be as a leader. How do you see Rohit Sharma and MS-Dhoni as captains?
So both of them were incredible leaders. They were inspiring leaders, inspired confidence in the team. They had slightly different personalities, and they both, the roles they played in the team was different. I think what both of them did equally well is Dhoni has a more calm, composed, unemotional nature, and he brought all of those personality strengths to his leadership, which created a calm and composed team around him. Rohit is a little bit more emotional. He's a bit more heartfelt. He's a bit more heart on the sleeve kind of individual. And what he does is he brings all of that personality to the team, which creates a slightly different strength and contribution that he makes. But what both of them did, they allowed other people in the leadership team to bring things that they didn't necessarily bring. And the result of that is your combined leadership team ticks all the boxes that are required to set up a really high performance environment.
And I spoke to you about the similarities. Now I just want to ask you about the difference. How is it that Virat every day he motivates himself, gets onto the field with the same confidence and with the same motivation? And, to think about doing something is one thing, but to make that happen day in and day out is something different. Virat Kohli over the years, recently, in the last game, in that semi-final game, he got his 50th ODI 100. Quite an achievement that was. But how different he is from the other international players, across the globe.
So in order to be the best in the world, or amongst the one or two best in the world, that's a very small position on top of a very, very large pile, even in international cricket. And what puts Virat there is the fact that he attends to his diet probably better than anyone else in the world, with more detail. When it comes to his training and the detail and the meticulousness that he prepares to be able, for example, to run 6 or 5 twos in the last over when he's on 100 and be able to hit the 6th ball for 6. He attends to the small 1%ers better than anyone else in the world. When it comes to preparing his batting, understanding his strengths and his non-strengths and how to play within that, he is the best in the world because he does those simple things that is available to everybody. He just does it better than anyone else, with more dedication, more commitment, more accuracy than anyone else. And there's other people who are probably more talented batsmen, but they're just lazier or not dedicated or not as committed as he is around the simple 1%ers.
And what do you think, before a final? Of course, you were part of that final story now that a lot of people know. What happened on the night of in fact, on the eve of the game, now just one sleep away, this final, what do you think the Indian players would be doing? Because I'm asking you because most of these players, you were part of this team last year as well, and most of these players were there in Australia for that T20 World Cup. What do you think? Because we talk a lot about the process. What do you think will be the process tonight, just a day before the game?
So, I don't know what it is, but I can guess with decent authority because I know Rohit and Rahul very well. And they will be leading a champion team. And what champion teams do is they don't overthink the game the night before the game. They'll be chilling, relaxing, doing what they naturally do, and not overthinking the game, number one. And in terms of their preparation, all that is required is to remind themselves of the basics that they've been doing very well all along. Just because it's a special game and a big game, the biggest mistake that teams make when they get there is thinking they need to do something special, something different, something more. When in reality, teams that win finals do the simple basics the best. They stick to it the longest, number one. There will always be mistakes and hiccups along the way. Champion teams recover very quickly and get back onto the game plan. And, you've got in the Indian, yes, people say Australia have made 5 finals. There's not many of the current Australian teams who've been in a World Cup, players who've been in a World Cup final. I would say an IPL final is almost as similar in terms of significance and pressure as a 50-over World Cup final. And you've got a lot more Indian players who've got experience of playing in finals in India in front of those big crowds. And of course, you've got a leader in Rohit who's led a team to 5 IPL finals. So you have probably got more finals experience in the Indian team, even though people say Australia have made 5 finals. I think India are more prepared to go into this final than what the Australian team players are at the moment.
Paddy, you mentioned about Australia. I just wanted to understand their psyche, because even before a tournament starts, you always put Australians amongst the top 4 teams, that they will surely make it to the semi-finals at least, irrespective of whether they win the title or not. And this is not the first time. Even before this World Cup started, at that time also, if you ask somebody who will be your top 4 teams, I understand it's just a 10-team competition. You always put Australia amongst the favorites. So what is the psyche of this Australian teams, in fact, these Australian teams over the years, that every time they come onto a big stage, a big tournament, they rise to the occasion? Is it inbuilt in the DNA, or it's just that skill factor?
No, there's a bit of both. So they're a very skilled team, obviously. But what they've got is they maintain the belief in their ability for longer because they've been there and done it before, or there's a history of Australian cricketers having done it before. Where other teams, when things get a bit difficult, when they lose 2 games or they end up in a difficult situation in a game, other teams who don't have that belief give up earlier and they back down earlier. Australia just stay in the game longer. They keep believing longer, and they're not as derailed by setbacks, by losses, by tough moments in the game. They just keep at it. They keep going, and they don't stop until the end. And that's a fairly simple mindset that any team could have. But what happens is, like with the South African team, for example, when the pressure really gets on, something goes wrong and they start playing a different kind of game. Australia have more belief. They keep it longer, which means they recover from setbacks. But we've seen the same thing with this current Indian team. A good example was the semi-final of that drop catch of Shami's in about the 30th over. That was potentially a very big setback, but you had a team that realized it's okay. We're not going to back down. We're not going to panic. We get back to playing our best game. We get back on track, and we know we'll be okay. And Shami goes on to get 7 wickets. So a great example of not allowing a setback to derail you and just keep coming back to the basics, stay on track. Australia have done that very well over the time, and we can expect them to do that tomorrow again.
Paddy, I know you've been part of the Indian dressing room for quite a bit. In fact, given a choice, there are 2 dressing rooms right behind me. Of course, one with the Indian dressing room and the Australian dressing room. Which dressing room would you want to be tonight?
It's very clear. In fact, I thought about this. If South Africa was in the final against India, I'm still very clear on the answer. The answer is the same. I would want to be in the Indian dressing room. My relationship with Indian cricket has been a lot more. It's gone a lot longer than with South African cricket. And I have, a very good relationship. I've worked with Rahul, obviously the coach, for a number of years. I've worked with a number of these players. I've got very close relationships with a number of the Indian players. And that's my home team, and India is my home away from home. So India all the way.
In fact, your connection, not just with the Indian team, Paddy, you were roped in for the men's hockey team also. With the hockey team also, you worked with a lot of Indian national teams. And, how do you see Mohammad Shami? He was not part of the first 4 games. The first opportunity that he gets against New Zealand in Dharamshala. What sort of mindset? You've seen him closely. In fact, there was a phase he had his own personal issues also. Then to get out of that, and the way he is performing the way he's performed in the last couple of years, or 3 years, 4 years, it's been incredible. How do you see Mohammad Shami's journey?
You see, very often we all in life go through difficulties and challenges, which Mohammad Shami did. And when we go through those times, we can either crumble and let them get the better of us and we go away, or we move and we keep going through those difficulties and we get stronger as a result of it, which makes us more resilient to face and navigate the future difficulties as we move forward. And Shami, I think, having gone through those difficulties, managed himself really smartly, got through them. Now he's able, when things go wrong, when he gets dropped, if he has a bad performance, if he drops a ball, because of his experience of building the resilience that came as a result of what happened before, he is now a more resilient and more skillful individual when it comes to dealing with setbacks and being able to get back on track. So in a way, those difficulties he faced, which would have been really tough at the moment, they probably have ended up being something of a gift to him.
Paddy, prediction time. What do you do after you win the toss? Do you bat first or do you chase? Because the crowd here is going to be electrifying. It's going to be a massive crowd here, over 1 lakh people shouting, rooting for the Indian team. What do you do, irrespective of whichever team you belong to?
Again, I think to a large degree, it boils down to the condition of the pitch. Is it going to stay the same for 100 overs? So I would take information from the pitch and the ground conditions and how it's played out over the tournament. But at the end of the road, India go in with probably a stronger overall batting plus bowling unit. They've got a better bowling unit, I would say, than what the Australians have got. So India will go in with a little bit more confidence and a less reliance on the toss, where maybe for Australia, they would probably have a little bit more of an attachment to either batting or bowling first, because their strengths aren't as equally balanced as the Indian team's is.
So many matches have already been played. We're just left with one more game. So far, if I ask you to pick your player of the tournament?
Shami's name, Virat Kohli's name comes out at top. Rohit has really, broken games open with his aggressive play up front. So the real champion teams, you have a few players who really deliver over the course of the time. Whereas if you've got one team with a standout man of the tournament, it's quite often that team doesn't actually win because they're relying on the performances of one player. So I think real kudos and strength to the Indian team that they've got 3 potential man of the tournaments in Rohit, Shami, Virat.
But you have to give just one. It's just one award. I'm sure. I'm sorry that I'm pushing you, but tomorrow, if you have given a choice,
I would give it to Virat, because where he bats the game, the scoreboard pressure becomes more and more, getting the team across the line, where when you're opening the batting like Rohit, you don't suffer as much scoreboard pressure as you do batting down the line. And I think with bowlers, they don't shoulder as much burden of responsibility as what a batsman does. A batsman's out there all by himself. The bowler has 10 fielders to support him and a captain to support him. So my vote would go with Virat.
Yeah, and it's unprecedented feat that he's gone past 700 runs in a single edition of a World Cup. 2 players from either side to watch out for tomorrow.
Sure. Good question. David Warner's got a lot of experience of playing in Australia, doing well. In India, doing well in IPLs. David Warner is potentially a big player. From that side, obviously Maxwell had that great innings, but I think he's a little bit hit and miss. And on the Indian side, again, I'm going to give you 3 names. Rohit can create some serious damage and set up some proper momentum with a bat. Shami's in great form, although the whole bowling lineup, I think one of the people that's sort of quite understated is Jasprit Bumrah. Having Bumrah in the attack and being as good as he is, players know we're not going to get our required run rate off Bumrah. So let's see him off. Let's not make the mistakes against Bumrah. We need to take risks against some of the other bowlers. And when that happens, some of the other bowlers actually get the wickets as a result of Bumrah being the X factor with a ball. So let's not forget that some of Shami's wickets would have come from Bumrah shutting batsmen down, creating some anxiety and getting them to attack the other bowlers. And of course, when Virat's with a bat and he's got his eyes on chasing a target down, there's no one in the world better at the moment who's able to pace an innings to chase a target down than Virat Kohli.
Paddy, before I wrap this up, your advice worked wonders for Virat Kohli. What advice would you want to give the Indian team if they are listening to you on the eve of this match?
They will hear this advice from Rahul and Rohit. It's keep it simple, stick to the basics, do what we've been doing, and do those things really well.
Paddy, thank you very much for your time. May the best team wins, and hopefully that best team is India tomorrow. Thank you very much, Paddy. Thanks a lot for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.